Hey everyone, we are live. Hope you are having a fantastic Saturday so far. This is the third show that we are deep diving into all things Blast, everything that's been going on this week. We've had the TGE pushback by a month. We're having more gold, more points, more jackpots, all of that good stuff. We've had a Fantasy.top Dip, which we're going to break down. We have meme coins, seeing some signs of life, which we're going to be talking about a little bit more as well. But today I'm joined by some of my favorite creators, both on Blast and just in crypto in general. We have Bread, who's going to be joining us in just a second, Tyler D, and then Radon Kai. I'm going to talk to them all about how they're navigating the Blast ecosystem, any predictions that they have, both bullish or bearish. If you are listening, we're giving away $200 in Pacmoon. This is the community coin of Blast. I'm just going to, obviously, I'm giving it out of my own pocket, but if you are listening in YouTube, give us a comment. I'll pick one viewer at the end of the show. And if you're listening on Twitter, if you give me a retweet and a comment, we will be picking them at the end of the show. But appreciate you all listening in. And if you have any questions, comments, etc., just let us know in the stream. We'll be handing them off maybe to some guests as time goes on. But to kick things off, let's get into it. I have Bread, aka @OX Bread Guy on Twitter. He's a fantastic follow, by the way. Very analytical, very level-headed at times. Even when I'm all over the place on Twitter, he's very level-headed. Data back takes, which are always great. Was early to Friend Tech early last year or late last year. He was covering all of it, and he's doing something similar with Fantasy Talk. So I really recommend following him. But Bread, it's great to have you on, man.
Hey guys, how you doing?
So let's get into it right away, right off the bat. We have this a little bit of a fantasy top pullback, and I want to pull up this tweet that you shared this morning. But you said hot take. Well, actually, we'll get into that in just a second. But we have fantasy top prices kind of bleeding all over the place post-tournament supply going up, but you shared a little bit of your analysis on it. I'll let you take it from here. What are you seeing from Fantasy Top after this dip? How are you thinking about it? And how are you kind of navigating this with the next tournament starting in less than 24 hours?
Yeah, okay. So background on me, you mentioned I'm pretty data driven. Obviously, you're showing a spreadsheet that I've kept locally. I've been, especially with all the PTSD from card games in this ecosystem, crypto writ large, I've been tracking supply demand pretty heavily, right? Like that, you want more cards, but more cards means less price per card, means number go down, bad for sentiment, right? People don't like number go down, we don't get wrecked. So yeah, I've been watching this stuff pretty closely and seeing how, how much supply is there, how much is coming, how much I want to expose myself to things that are susceptible to having additional supply. And so Seneca put out that tweet, said, hey, we're seeing numbers down across the board, right? It was basically red for everything but the 7 heroes, he said. So I went and looked and saw, because we know it's a big unlocked, right? I have two things on there. One, the soft locked, and you see fucking wreckage, right?
Yeah.
And so the question is, okay, is this people selling because they want to reposition because there's a new algorithm, there's new tournaments, there's new, so is it people staying in the game and wanting to just reshuffle their cards? Because you saw a lot of people said this is different than I expected, I need to fucking change the game. So they're trying to change stuff up, or if they're just trying to get out altogether. So I was just looking to see okay, we had, what was it, 30% of total circulating supply come onto the markets all of a sudden, and about 25-ish% of that hit the marketplace. So yeah, it looks like 38% unlocked, and then a 21% of that hit the market. I saw that happen, and it's encouraging that it wasn't just a straight dump across the board. And I would say, given the sentiment I'm seeing, I'm still having a good time. And the rate at which the team's iterating, I think it's mostly just people repositioning, realizing they're holding on to something from day one with the algo that changed. Now they're trying to figure stuff out. But I have some more supply comments, but I think we're gonna get into that a little later.
Well, and you said hot take, but I think we need more supply, which is why I'm not bidding high-end cards. I feel the same way. You said it's a money ball game until it's no longer the way. I've long been buying what I feel is undervalued cards. The biggest play, the best play this week was Kaleo, for example. When you're looking at it, has been on vacation. He's very good at navigating Twitter as a whole. It's just a matter of if and when he comes back. I didn't know he'd be coming back so soon, but that was a play.
And crushing. Like, now he didn't just come back. He came back and he's what, 17 right now?
Yeah, so just dominating, and he was a 2-star, right? You could get him for like 0.03 at some point at those lows, and now he got up to as high as 0.25 and going from there. You said, and moving on to like the higher end side of things, it's very risky getting into like the higher end plays. Like even on commons, the supply can be so low, and these are so illiquid. It's wild. I have an example. I was Lil Moon Lambo, who was actually underperforming comparatively this week. I had some bids in at like 0.2, 0.25, and I saw one hit. And it was like, basically, I was the only one that was controlling the floor price and bid. And there was someone that wanted to get out, and I kept underbidding them myself and waited, like baiting them to take my lower bid, right? So they took my bid. They got like, they kind of lost a little. But anyways, that's just to say that it's wild how little people are actually like putting in the work and like really like looking at this at a high level. And you obviously are in the thick of it. So I'm curious how you're kind of navigating that aspect of it more from a trading perspective, how you're interested in knowing the tournaments we have coming up, the potential additional supply at the end of the common tournament as well.
Yeah, so I mean, all these kind of tied together with a tweet that I did because I actually dumped my Kaleo 2 days ago, 2 days ago. And in that I said, because like Kaleo came on, he's crushed. It's now like 0.2 to get his common, and everyone's looking at this like I want Kaleo for my main tournament. And what I saw was all the main finishers of these past 2 tournaments have all the so I dumped it. And like in retrospect, I still think it's a good move. You shouldn't play him in a competitive deck in the main tournament.
Yeah.
But looking at some of the other high price, like I still think the market's dumb, frankly. The market doesn't understand how they're going to place really high in a main tournament because they're just playing known cards that are doing well. But Ansem, Greg, Kaleo, all these guys, because they've been so good for so long, Kaleo's a little bit of an outlier because he started off shitty, but he's going to be re-rated on Sunday and he's going to have a low emission. So like, his supply that's out there today is basically going to be what's it for the next fucking couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at the supply that's actually out there relative to like how many of the upper tier cards that are created, the legendaries, the epics, the whatever, it's too many people fighting for such a small supply of cards. And whenever you have that many people all bidding each other up, right? So if I want to do a Kaleo and I wanted to try to make an epic, and you absolutely have to have an epic plus if you're wanting to have a top, like, I don't know, 150 finish in the tournament, like to be top tier,
in the have to have. And we might have lost Brett there with his internet. Brett, your internet's cutting out a little bit.
Am I back?
There we go. You're back. Yeah, you're back.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So if you want to place in the top in the tournament, you absolutely have to have like epic plus, because a 2 times multiplier, 2 times 5 or 2.5 times multiplier on a shitty card is better than a 1 or 1.5 price math, right? So if everyone wants a Kaleo, an Anthem, a Greg or whatever, but you're going to get dunked on by like the Lil Moon Lambos of the world that have a legendary out there because it can get the multiplier. So even though he's not as good, he has the multiplier. And if you look at all of the cards that are on the upper tier that are performing well and their supply is low, you frankly have to spend it's either unattainable, frankly, like straight up. You cannot buy enough cards to even make a legendary, or you're going to pay out your ear, right? And spend 15 ETH to do it, 50 ETH to do it. And if you look at Kaleo now, to build a epic on him, you're paying more than like a legendary of a lot of other cards, even though the legendaries are scoring more, right? So that's stupid. Why would you do that? Yeah, look at the market on this thing. 46. You need 125 commons to make legendary. Okay, you need. So there are some epics out there. How much you paying for that epic? 5 ETH. Like I placed 325-ish, I think, in this last tournament, and I spent an ETH. That's it. Right. Because there's people out there that are outperforming, and I don't care about performance. I don't care that I have Kaleo in my back pocket. I have random Twitter XYZ as long as they're putting up numbers. And So anyways, it comes back to supply. Like you hit supply is just going to get crunched now. You're not going to be able to build a legendary out of them. So I'm not even playing the game. That's why I dumped them. I use that for another card that I think is I have a chance of building a higher end card out of, and they're going to overperform.
And then there's also layers to it, right? If you're not looking at it from a main tournament perspective, and you're looking at like the commons
Correct.
only tournament, which is less than 15 stars, your value per star from Kaleo this week was the number one, like by far, like
Yeah, crushed.
insane performance. But next week, when it's re-rated as a 5 or 6 star, the value per star goes down, right?
Exactly.
So
Yeah, he'll be normalized, right?
right. How are you thinking about that aspect of it and the star rating, the score? Actually, before we get into that, on the scoring side of things, you said you only care about scoring. That's pretty much the only, like, you don't care who it is. Just give me a good performance. On that note, I think a theme of this week was people being surprised by the lack of performance from Zeneca, despite him putting out really good content this week, I would argue, and being on top of it and like getting a good impressions per tweet, but he underperformed compared to what I think a lot of people were expecting. What did you make of that? Do you put any value in just buying good creators that and kind of banking up on a potential rescoring? How are you thinking about that?
No, not at all. So with the one thing the team has showed us is that they don't make, so they do announce changes and they make changes, but even the transition from that 0.2 to 0.3 algo they just did, they said they slowly transitioned over a 5-day period, right? So we saw the gradual change from one to the other. It wasn't just one day it's on, yesterday it was off kind of thing. So knowing that, I just sat there and looked at the trend of all of the heroes over the last X days going into the tournament. So I built it with 1 ETH like an hour before the tournament, and I placed 320 whatever, right? So yeah, so you can see those, that top 5 there is what I did. I don't have a lot of cards. I have 37 cards.
Yeah.
And if you look at my tournament performance, it's been like 500, 1K. And this is the first one I kind of took seriously, and I got up to 325, whatever. So I just looked at the trend for all of the heroes leading into that, and I said, okay, who's underpriced? Who gives me the most money or most points for my ETH spend? And then I just said, I know based on how the team has done this stuff, and I kind of look at them like I don't know who Clearpill is, no idea. I've never sex offender, never heard of the fucking person, but I saw that they were doing well going into the tournament. I looked at their tweets and I saw that they won at least like acknowledged friend tech and were like being consistent, didn't look botted, right? So like if they were botted, maybe they get nerfed or something, but they didn't seem botted. So like whatever this fucking person's doing, it's normal for them, and they were continuing to do normal stuff. So I said, okay, that's what I'm gonna lean into. And so I just wrote the trend because the team plays on trends, right? They don't do quick changes.
A theme I'm looking at your deck, obviously, other than Eric Wall, was a low follower count, but high kind of impressions per tweet almost. You look at Pancakes, right? You know, he has 34,000, a little higher, but Little Clear Pill at 11, Imran at 14, and Sex Vendor at 20K. Obviously, Eric Wall's a little bit higher, but that's a toss up there. Use a 2-star as well. You got great.
I actually had Pacman in place of Eric. Eric's someone I've just been kind of accumulating because I thought he was underdone. But
yeah, Eric's good. Eric's great. So you got Pacman in there instead. Very interesting. What did you make? So were you surprised at all by kind of how things unfolded this week from a hero performance point of view? Are you looking at any? Obviously, we have the rescoring happening tomorrow, and you saw someone like Rasmer, who I thought was way too high rated for how he was doing. He had like a very good week the week before because he had like 2 viral videos. You could have shorted him and it would have been like a great play, but obviously you can't do that. When you look at him, he only has 6 cards that are listed right now, and not a lot of.
Wouldn't touch him.
What about post rescoring? Right now, like he's probably going to be rescored as like a 2 or 3 star. How are you thinking about that? Like, I'm just curious right now, during this discount, what you're most interested in buying and how you're looking at kind of buying some of these things at a discount.
Yeah. So so it depends. I have 2 categories. One is like a spot buy that I'll play for a tournament and flip, right? So that's like I may flip out of Little Clear Pill. I may even dump Pac-Man because Pac-Man's kind of inconsistent. I don't like that. He's good to have in my back pocket, but if he's really overpriced in my eyes, like relative to the market, I'll sell him. So there's two categories. One is the spot buys for tournaments. I just look at market rates going for someone. If someone's getting really fucking hyped up, I'll dump them just to rotate out. It's ready for Kaleo, right? Kaleo's been getting gobbled up. It's like I don't need him. I dumped him and played Eric Wall and just, got like just about the same performance. But yeah, he did really well. I probably could have done better if I held on to him, but whatever, that happens. And then there's like long-term accumulation. Like I want to build towards a legendary, like that. And that one, that criteria is less about, that one has a little more analytics to it. So I deeply look into their supply and demand, right? I look at a bunch of different stuff. How much of it has been burned, how much is on the market, what their actual average price is. Like I do a lot of analysis on that. There's some that I'm accumulating for that. But so those are the long term. I need them to be not overburned. I need them to have a decent supply that can allow me to get into them to build a higher end card. And I need them to have some kind of catalyst coming up in the future. Like Smokey the Bear, I'm interested in him because he's launching a chain right over the next couple of months. So like I want exposure there. And I actually have the only one bidding on him right now. So we'll see how well that works after this stream. But I've been gobbling up some of his cards the last few days.
Interesting. I mean, his legendary, this seems like a pretty cheap potential legendary, and it's interesting.
It's the only one.
Interesting. Nice. Okay.
And that's the other thing too, right? You want to have different decks. So like I want high performance, and I don't want it to be a card that's like everyone has, right? So like if everyone's playing Kaleo, like I don't want a Kaleo, right? Because that means I'm gonna just scratch, right? It's a chalk pick and that's whatever. So mix and match.
So I've changed my strategy a little bit. Up until literally yesterday, Brad, I was only buying to flip basically. And because things just to me felt kind of wild with prices like the cost to compete, I felt was high. I'm surprised you got in. You said for 1 ETH and you did well, which is incredible. And I think there's a nuance in there, but I was literally just flipping. Now, all of a sudden I'm interested in competing again because of the lack of price action that we're seeing. I think you can build a pretty good deck. And I don't know if you're frozen or if you're just focused. He's definitely frozen. But what I was saying was I'm interested in buying some of these rares here at some of these prices because of how low a lot of them are, right? Like when you look at there are less than 1,000 people that are signed up for this upcoming rare tournament. So you're able to get a pretty good entry into it. But anyways, I thought you were frozen. Now you're back. I guess when you look at the long term or the next 4 or 5, 6 weeks, right? You are obviously early to Friend Tech. We watched how that went through a parabolic rise and like a 95%.
Yeah.
Everyone was dunking on Friend Tech. It was the end of it, blah, blah, blah. I've thought this could be similar. We saw its initial hype life cycle, I think, extended by about 30 days by the delay of the Blast TGE. Obviously, there's a little bit of difference between this and Friend Tech because they have this gold incentive. They have this treasury that they're giving supposedly 40-45% of the stuff to. But I'm curious, with your experience, how you're thinking about the longer term life cycle of Fantasy.top and how that compares to Friend Tech.
So compares well. It's a dominant or like the trend setting app within a category, right? So like what these guys are doing is unique enough that it's like under the social umbrella-ish, but it's still, I would say, unique enough that it's kind of a defining thing. You'll probably see other teams copy this stuff, just like you saw Friend Tech, right? Stars Arena, all these other things. The difference is that makes this a little scarier is Friend Tech, although yes, a lot of hype, it was all instant liquidity and a bonding curve, right? So if I wanted to sell, boom, I'm out. Like, yes, I'll take a hit maybe if I'm the last person out the door, but I always had a bid, right? Always. It was in the contract. Yeah. This, if something goes sideways, the bid's gone. Like everything that you have in is evaporated, right? So that's a little scarier. But on the other side of that, you have a team that's also recycling stuff back into the community. Because in the Friend Tech thing, it was purely a points game, right? Like, yes, also like your like novel app you think is going to change the world, whatever stuff being built on top of it, cool. But you're doing it for the points. The farmers, the big guys, were doing it for the points and hoping that would then pay off. In my eyes, this is very similar, except it's not as one-dimensional, because the team that's earning the fees has already shown an ability or willingness to send that back to the community, which is great for incentives and keeping momentum going, energy, all of that shit. But also because it's layered points, right? So it's not isolated to just fan token, which I'm very interested in because I like this team. It's Blast Gold, it's ETH, it's card. Like it's like there's a lot of layers to it that they don't have to fan doesn't have to work out. And I don't think it's going to be something that comes in a year and a half from now, right? Like, I think if fan drops, it drops within 6 months. So, you know, same thing, similar stuff, a little scary because there's no instant liquidity, but I think that's mitigated by the team. Team's better, frankly. Like, one, they're actually talking directionally about like what their intent is, which we got nothing out of Racer for Frentech. We were just casting our money into a void and hoping that the thing worked out, and the dude was kind of schizo. They're talking to us, they're giving feedback, and they're pretty mindful and thoughtful on their actual changes. So I'm encouraged by it. And it's not raw deployment, right? I deployed 1 ETH and I got top 300 here in Frentech. Literally, the only way to get more points is deploy more ETH. That was it. So I had to throw a shit ton of ETH into that protocol to farm it. This, if I'm smart, which I'm trying to be, then I can deploy very little ETH and get just as much, if not more, fan points and Blast and ETH and cards and whatever than everyone else. So like, that's enticing to me.
The downside that I have not thought about of my and kind of this thought process I was having yesterday, when I was like, dude, I need to be actually trying to compete a little bit more, because I've been looking at it strictly from a
Trader,
Blast
right?
Gold. Yeah,
Oh,
right.
yeah.
When I was looking at it as a trader, I was literally just trying to stack as much ETH as possible. But when you play the game, you're getting gold, you're getting pack players, but most importantly, and I think this is kind of flying under the radar, you get fan points. And fan points are kind of this thing that not really a lot of people are kind of talking about. I think it's their ace up their sleeve that they haven't, people are underpricing or under indexing for. We saw them tweet literally last night. Next week, we will all learn what star, I'm assuming this is points, right?
Yep, those are the stars. Well, those are the stars. The stars are for the lotteries.
Stars for the lot. I actually read this wrong. I thought this was for their fan points. So they have stars in this as well. What are you? So you said lotteries. Is that what it's going to be used for?
Yep. Yeah, they've so it's actually in their docs, but they've been very clear about it. So they ran this earlier on in testnet, or at least talked about it. Yes, they're going to do lotteries every week or 2 weeks, whatever. And that's what those stars are. And those stars accumulate from rewards, but also from raw ETH deployed. So like that, like they actually accumulate while you have ETH in the protocol. So there's 2 ways to earn that.
Got it. And when you look at just overall Fantasy.top in general for the next week or so, what do you think is the most, like, the biggest opportunity for you right now? I like the way you think about it from a more long-term perspective. Like, you have people, you're trying to stack these legendaries. You're like, you have specific people that you are interested in. And like, you have a list, I'm assuming, of like specific heroes where you're like, dude, I'm going to just keep stacking these people over time because I think they're going to perform well. Versus I'm a lot more short-sighted. But when you look at next week, do you have any predictions for how things could play out? We have the common only tournament ending in a little less than 2 days. We have the rare only tournament happening tomorrow, and then the common only tournament happening next week. I'm assuming there's going to be another main tournament as well. Any thoughts or predictions on kind of how this could play out from a high level, especially given that it's starting to get a little shaky, I think, for the first time, where I'm seeing on Twitter, I'm seeing people being like, hey, I basically made money. Casual players that made money by literally doing nothing. They were just early, that now all of a sudden they realize, you're like, oh, like, you actually have to put effort and thought into this game. I'm taking my 25% profit. I'm out of here. But we're kind of at a crossroads here. But I'm curious of what you make of this general situation, given potential catalysts that might come in the next 7 days, and what you're most interested in right now.
So that people leaving doesn't worry me, because right, like, the team has rewards that they have to give away, right? Whether it's fan, whether it's gold, whether it's whatever. So if people are leaving, whatever, not my problem. I'll compete with less people to win more shit, right? There's almost $2.5 million if you go by Sam's calculations in gold being distributed in the two common and rare tournament, right? Just those 3 alone, right? And if the pool of people is 9,000 and it gets cut down to 4,000, I'm not going to cry, right? Because I am in this to try to play and try to earn. Higher I place, more rewards I get.
That's why I like your thought process of just participating, because worst case scenario, it's like, okay, people leave and I get like way more rewards. There's less competition out there, right?
Right. Participating but maximizing how much I spend, because I don't want to be overextended and get fucking dunked on, right? If I go in there and say like, oh, I don't care if people leave, I'll just buy the best cards. I'm going to spend 50 ETH and I'm going to win 20 ETH, right? So I still want to be smart about how I play, which is why I'm doing this like money ball thing of like place pretty damn high, but not go crazy on spend. And that balance I think is worthwhile. But that said, I still think it'll do well. I'm not too worried about team shipping, like, and I'm trying to watch trends. Like that's why I have those spreadsheets, because I want to see, like, they're going to have tournaments. There's going to be unlocks. They're going to have tournaments. They're going to have unlocks. So like this is a repeat cycle we're going to see for the life of this app, right? It's a same thing. So I want to see how the market reacts every time, so that I can develop a trend and say like, look, this happened the last 3 times we did this. I know we're going to continue to do this cycle. I want to see how people behave with that. So yeah.
And we saw, you know, the crazy thing was with what you saw, this Moneyball strategy. I saw, I was trying to pull up the account. I couldn't find it super easily, but this person basically that placed number 2 in the very first tournament, and they just placed number 3 in the latest one.
Nice.
I saw them tweet about how they were disappointed by the amount of rewards, right? Because this person must have 50 ETH into this thing, right? Like such a massive level of
depends on when you got in though, right?
Depends on when he got in, but what he was saying, I'm assuming I saw numerous tweets of him saying, I acquired this legendary for X, Y, and Z. So I'm assuming he's in for higher, but he was basically saying like, I was disappointed by the rewards I've been getting based on the amount of ETH I've spent. I'd rather go farm my ETH or my gold elsewhere, which I thought was very interesting, where I'm like, okay, there's also that dynamic of it. So this Moneyball strategy of you going for not this top 10 or like, and who knows, you might get there either way.
Eventually, yeah, right.
Like, it certainly is interesting, and I resonate with that a lot more versus trying to be going for these top spends. When you look at building decks, how do you budget? Do you have a specific amount that you got in with that you're like, hey, this is much, like I'm going to try to make the most of the 2 ETH I put in? Or do you also like you're willing to put more ETH into it just depending on your strategy and you're kind of feeling it out?
Yeah, so I came in, I got like two decks for like whatever, 2 free decks and whatever to start off. So that's why I played the first tournament in. Cool. I got like top whatever 500, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna take this seriously. So I deployed 3 ETH, and I'm still sitting on like an ETH and a half, and the rest of my cards I've been buying and doing whatever. So I'm gonna try to stay into that. I'm willing to deploy more just because I do like, I want to see how this tournament turns out and what the rewards look like. And if I feel like I need to take it to another level, then like maybe I'll deploy a little bit more, depending on how the people above me earned, right? If they earn enough that me deploying another 2 or 3 ETH is meaningful or would be meaningful and would counterbalance that, yeah, I'll go for it. But also, like I mentioned, I don't want to buy higher end cards because I think the higher end is what's going to come down, right? You're not going to see these guys that come in and just spend, because we're constantly getting more supply. That supply is constantly consolidating under cards as they upgrade. Those upgrades are then bleeding up. So like that upper tier is getting diluted the most, right? Well, not the most, but like it is getting diluted, right? So if I came in and dropped my deck and bought these big cards day one, awesome. I would have rode that for a little bit, but eventually those will continue to be like just status quo for getting in, right? Everyone's going to have rares. Everyone's going to have epic. Everyone's going to have, as more and more cards get into supply, like there'll be more variety, but like that tier will get diluted. So I don't want to just like go and overpay for epics and legendaries now, because I feel like all of that stuff is just everything's melting out as cars get into supply, and I think we need more. So yeah.
And can you talk a little bit more about that supply? Like you think we need more, and what you mean by that specifically?
Yeah, it's like because some cars are getting locked, right? It's actually ties into your Tyler comment, right? So Tyler is now Kaleo is going to be in the Tyler spot, right? It's a card that's going to be performing well, but they're not going to have enough supply to be used in a competitive deck. So in order for us to have variance, we need more epics, more legendaries, more whatever across the board, because we do have a cluster of them that are performing well at the top. And those are mostly the cards that have really low supply, are really low rank. So they have really high supply. They all got consolidated. There'll be like 25 legendary gems out there or whatever. So like him and War Daddy, or her and War Daddy, all these people, all of those have been able to assume legendaries. And those are the top performing decks, top 50, top 100, whatever. And we need to have more variance, which means we need more epics and legendaries. And we can't have more of those until we have more supply of everyone. That'll happen over enough time. Like, and then there's this constant jostling of like, I want to make a graphic of it, but it's like we have a cap of supply right now based on the burn and mint. And then we have like a soft lock tier now with all these concurrent tournaments, right? So we have this concept of like soft lock level of things technically off the market because they're locked in there. And I think that's going to allow them to introduce more actual supply into circulating on top of that and do it a little faster than we would have normally because, you know, like they technically, if they run a concurrent tournament, will always have 50% of circulating supply off the market and it'll stop it from crashing everything. So yeah, I just think they need more supply, more variants, more fun, more heroes, more everything. But that's not good for prices, which is not good for sentiment. So you have to be careful about how you do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, Brett, I could talk to you about this for hours. I'm going to have to let you go. Thank you so much for joining, man. That was
Thanks for having
fantastic. Me. Keep crushing it. Make sure to follow Brett. Absolutely underrated follow. This guy's just dominating all things graphics. I love his breakdown, the way he's an absolutely high level, very smart guy. Follow him at OX Bread Guy on Twitter. Brett, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, bud.
Thanks.
Later.
All right. That was Bread. Up next, we have Tyler D joining us. He's the host of the Lucky Lead-In with Lucky Trader. He's been doing this for, I think, almost 2 years, a year and a half. Absolutely crushing that. Great host. He was recently announced new talent for Rug Radio. He's replacing OSF, I believe, in that morning show, but great to see that. I've long said that he's like the Ian Rappaport of crypto news. This guy is just literally lives on Twitter. He's got to be firing off like 500 to 1,000 tweets a week, but I don't know how he does it. But Tyler, man, it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining.
Clemente, it's been way too long, my man, since we've done a show together. Folks probably don't know this, but there was a month-long period where we were doing a weekly show. It was a ton of fun. Didn't catch on quite as much as we wanted, but it was good.
We'll get there. I mean, who knows? But thanks for joining, man. I know you are. You're covering. I think I'm very curious to jump into Blast with you at a little bit of a higher level, right? So I talked a little bit about it this earlier with Bread, but like this week we saw Fantasy.top go through like massive euphoria and then the pullback. We're seeing Blast TGE delayed by a month. We're seeing also Blur Season 3 delayed. We got Pacmoon reaching a temporary all-time high after OSF literally market buys 300K worth of Pacmoon, which is insane. Blast NFTs capitulating. But other than like Fantasy.top, because I just talked about that with Bread, to you, like what is most interesting in this kind of Blast ecosystem, given what we've seen in the last 7 days and how you're looking at the next month or so?
I think it's tokens and perhaps NFT/games. I think that is what's going to be interesting. The number one question that I've seen in the past week, especially since the TGE delay till June, is how do I start farming this? And I don't think people are going to start going through the list of protocols and do like the Cyrus style farming. The jackpot's just too enticing and it's too easy to play. Yeah. And the easiest way to play it is to buy tokens right now. So I think that's going to be a new theme that emerges. I think it's been pretty disappointing so far, the token performance pretty much across the board besides Pacmoon. I mean, look at that jackpot. It's 2 million. It's going to hit tonight. A big one's going to hit tonight. I'm feeling it. And we've seen people like EB7, Eric, he's a farmer. He does a lot of things. He basically said, I'm done, playing these protocols. I'm just going to buy tokens and hope to hit jackpots. And I think a lot of people are going to do that. And I think the other biggest thing, I mean, this is kind of breaking this week too. So much happened this week for Blast. Wolfgame, man.
Yeah. I was just bringing that up. I forgot that.
So well. Yeah. So I think people are go ahead.
Sorry, I think there's a little bit of a delay there, but with Wolfgame, this is very interesting. So for people that don't know, we saw them announce their move or their bridge to Blast. I've long kind of called for the fact that we need this ETH, older, more mature ETH NFT culture migrating over to Blast and kind of taking advantage of this opportunity for Wolfgame. It makes so much sense for them. But tell me more about, I guess, how you're thinking about Wolfgame in particular.
I'm not a Wolfgame expert, and we've been talking. It doesn't make sense for the ETH NFTs to bridge over. I think for the big collections, it doesn't make sense. I don't think we're going to see that. But for collections that, have a community, perhaps they've been struggling, like they're not in the spotlight and it's kind of hard to see their catalyst. It makes a ton of sense for them. And I think Wolfgame, this was such a brilliant move. So, right now we have a 6-week sprint to a confirmed airdrop date. People are diving into this ecosystem. They want to farm it. They see all the gold that's still on the table. They don't know where to go. Well, guess what? Now you can all start fresh in a pretty level playing field via Wolfgame. And I think people should play. Like if you are looking to farm Blast and you haven't really been doing it yet, I don't know there's many better opportunities potentially on the board than playing Wolfgame. And this is not like bag bias. I don't really have any Wolfgame assets. I did do the free claim this morning. They whitelisted several communities, NFT holders, token holders across Blast. Yeah, you can see the list there. So I think they did a good job there pulling in folks from these existing communities. And it's been a slam dunk. And I talked to Zombie on my show yesterday, and he didn't go as far to confirm this, but the speculation is Pac-Man's going to reward these guys with a big pile of Blast gold.
So that's you bring up multiple points here, right? The first is this kind of trend that we're seeing of a Blast, like the Blast OG farmers getting exhausted. Which has kind of been a common trend of we saw that with when Pacmoon got the second jackpot, right? All of these guys were saying I bridged to Blast and in November I got on and I researched all the dApps and I've been doing all this stuff. Why the hell am I getting diluted, or these guys are just whooping my ass for just holding tokens? And then I also flipped my own mindset because I was doing Bloom. I was taking leveraged longs on Bloom and basically intentionally losing money because I was yeah, I got to get that Blast gold. And then on the flip side, I'm literally by just using and playing Fantasy.top and by holding Pacmoon, I'm I get 15x the gold for the amount of capital I'm putting in. This feels like less of a this feels like a no-brainer. What you're saying is Wolfgame is going to be this ecosystem, kind of like Fantasy.top, right? Where Blast kind of kickstarts their adoption because of a potential Blast gold distribution. They're an OG kind of collection bringing this community to Blast, and is an opportunity for you to kind of participate in a new game or ecosystem that is Wolfgame, and potentially win some gold, maybe win additional rewards.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And coming back to your farmer comment just quickly, I've been drinking those crying farmers' tears for the past week and a half, ever since Pacmoon hit that jackpot and basically outperformed farmers who've been farming these apps for quite some time. Cyrus, literally OSF with his big Pacmoon bag, has more gold than Cyrus does after farming it the entire time. So I understand why Cyrus would be frustrated, but at the same time, if you're Pac-Man, how is Blast L2 going to succeed? It's not going to, you need TVL, of course, that is a part of this, but it's not farmers. You need more, you need economic activity. You need people trading tokens, trading NFTs, playing games. You need real users. And you kind of said it yourself. You had this realization you were doing all this dumb shit that you didn't care about, and you were losing money to try to get gold. And I think I was kind of doing similar things. And then we're just stop. Let's just do the things we like.
Yeah.
And guess what? In the last month, we've been rewarded for that. And I don't think Wolfgame is going to do a Fantasy.top arc. I don't think it's going to capture that much zeitgeist, but they're positioned well. And you're not going to go sign up and play Crypto Valleys. How many games are there on Blast to play right now? This is a shiny new game, level playing field. Let's go.
I love that, and I agree on multiple points there. On the fact that so I was trying to play the game. I was literally trying to participate in I just want to be a normal user. I'm okay, fine. Hey, let me try District 1. District 1 is the most insane thing I've ever seen in terms of learning how to play it and the rallying and all. I gave up on that. Then I'm okay, let me play Crypto Valleys. The yield token, I lost 70% in 3 days. I'm okay, that's not fun. Cambria, I haven't tried, so I got to give that a chance still. But you bring up the overall point, Tyler. I think of culture is still missing Well, culture just takes time to develop on Blast, right? And D Farmer brought this up as well. Pac-Man knows there's no culture built and little to no moat, so he keeps turning you with trinkets. I don't agree with the entire point that he brings up, but this idea of culture on Blast is still, it requires time, and pretty much Pacmoon, now Fantasy.top is driving that a little bit, but it was just so hyper incentive. This incentivized culture just doesn't work, right? Like Blastopians was the culture on Blast. They went down like 70% in the last week and a half, right? And that is still so early, but like this cultural play is kind of what interests me, and it's less about it's kind of about bringing the right teams on here versus the users, right? And it seems like that's kind of what Pacman has been able to accomplish now with a Wolf game, bridging over, being one of the first to do so.
Well, you need to incentivize the teams, and then the good teams are going to bring users. I couldn't disagree with D Farmer's point more. I think it was an egregious tweet. That's exactly how I felt 6 weeks ago. I was coming on my show and saying, no one cares about Blast. It's just farmers PvPing versus each other. There's nothing happening. But like what Pac-Man did is he bought himself time, and he kept rewarding these dApps, and then he hit a couple jackpots. Like Fantasy.top has a real user base. Like Wolf Game could absolutely capture a user base. Now Pacmoon has a real community brewing. The token's starting to move up a little bit. We know like what happens when tokens start to rally. So like I actually do think some culture is starting to form. I don't think that's in any way a part of the delay. I think Pacman came out and said that himself, right? Like there's just steps that have to be done to execute airdrop. Totally get that. But I do think some culture is starting to form. Like I think NFT traders, token traders are starting to come over and organically use Blast. And like my MetaMask, like I'm on Blast, the Blast RPC most of the day now. Like when I'm live and trading on my computer, and I think that's something to say. Like I'm not on base, I'm not on Arbitrum, I'm not on AVAX, I'm on Blast most of my time.
And we haven't seen well, compared to what I was expecting, I don't know what you were expecting, but on Blast, I think we have yet to see like true, like we haven't seen a mint come out and just straight up like capture massive attention. I was expecting that. Like Blast Toads was an interesting one where it did like, it was a 0.025 minute, got up to, it did like a 4X, and then now it's back down to like 0.05. That one was interesting, but like we haven't seen a good old fashioned, like a good old fashioned cook. We saw PEW. This is a ticker PEW. The PEW coin, there's a meme coin on Blast that I thought was interesting. There certainly is an appetite there. They oversubscribed their pre-sale yesterday by 1,600%. They raised $10 million. I've long been saying that we need a second meme coin on Blast. Like Baja is number 2, and it's at like 1.5, or Andy, I guess, as well. Did you participate in this pre-sale?
I did. So like a little bit of disclosure, I fired 0.9 ETH into the pre-sale after I saw a few people tweeting about it. I was pretty early. I really wish they would have closed the damn window. But I think PEW is the most important thing happening in the Blast ecosystem in the next 2 to 3 days. And there's probably not anything all that close. I mean, of course, Fantasy.top is a big thing. But like you nailed it. We need tokens to succeed. Darren OX, he's talked about this before. Basically, like for meme coins to really run up in ecosystems, you need a pyramid. Like you need a foundation underneath them to be able to really send tokens up to 100 million to 500 million to $1 billion. To get $1 billion token, you need tokens. You need 3 or 4 at least that are 9 figures. And then you need 20 that are 50 million. And then you need hundreds that are going to like 1 million. And like that's non-existent right now. But we have the next potential win, and I have no idea if this is going to be good or not. I mean, $10 million in pre-sale. It's
I don't know either. Dude, I'm cloud. So I put in 0.1 ETH, and I got some tokens. I think I got someone that used my referral link to put in like 3 ETH. So I think I got a little bit of an allocation there. But either way, I'm planning on putting in a fair amount. Like, or once this thing launches, if it's sub 10 million bucks up at the start, I'm going hard. Obviously, not financial advice to anyone listening, but I'm like, let's go, dude. People are so excited to like, there's so much FOMO on Blast right now. and you have incentivized degeneracy basically, because you're like, yo, I can get in on this, and like you can put it in the jackpot, you can do all this stuff. So you're seeing like this rocket fuel that's applied to a lot of these tokens that we haven't really seen at all yet. So I agree with your point. I only put in 0.15 and I didn't get that many tokens, but if anything, the fact that it was a capped amount that you could that people could basically, that they could raise, and then there was kind of a pro-rated depending on how much you send and all that aspect of it, will honestly make for more FOMO. Do you have any I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any market cap predictions for this bad boy? Right now we have Pacmoon at 170 FDV, 170 million, $60 million market cap. Any predictions for what PEW could kick off with after 24 hours after its launch?
10 million. And then we need Pacmoon to level up to 100 million, and maybe PEW can go to 50 million. I think there's huge upside here. The reason this is important, and actually, I'll come back to that in a second. But imagine this thing launches and then hits a 50% Blast Gold jackpot like in the first day or so. That would be huge. And I mean, Pac-Man, like there's reasons to kind of make that happen. If you're the leprechaun, playing the jackpot wheel over there, it's wealth effect. So no one has really made all that much money holding NFTs or tokens on Blast yet, except for the Pacmoon community. And it's so important. So like the whole reason why I've been able to I fired about 10 ETH into Fantasy.top solely because the success that I was lucky and fortunate to have with Pacmoon, and having that token run up 50x. And I did buy it on day one with all the ETH that I had bridged over to Blast. So it hit a nice return on that in addition to the airdrop. But why I'm saying that is because like now that enables me to do other things inside the Blast economy. And like no one else really has had a chance to run it up yet. So like we need these tokens to run up. And then if that does happen, if we see people making 5 figures, perhaps 6 figures on PEW, they're going to rotate around Blast. I don't think they're just going to bridge off. Like they're going to find other things to do with it. And then all the assets in the ecosystem can and will win. I haven't really seen people talking about that, but like that needs to happen for Blast to do well. So like our Pac-Man team, I think I start getting behind some of these tokens. Who knows? But they would be incentivized. They are incentivized for them to do well.
Yeah, if you incentivize your core audience, your core users to like, if they start doing well and they sprinkle the rest of it into NFTs, all that stuff. Same point, Tyler. I did pretty well in Fantasy.top. I took an ETH out of Fantasy.top, and I had an ETH laying around that I bridged over. I just put another 2 ETH into Pacmoon because it's like the only thing that's not collapsing, that isn't like massively over like farmed or people buying it just for the jackpot. But if there was other things where I felt like if PEW was already out, I'd be just putting it into there because it's certainly an interesting buy when you look at every other ecosystem has a number one. Like on Solana right now, it's a dog with hat that is getting crushed right now, by the way. And then you have Bonk, right? You have Doge and you have SHIB. So I'm waiting for that same number 2 to come in. And it's not that unrealistic to feel like we could have something at 10, 15 or $30 million market cap with Pacmoon at 150 FDV, 60 mil circulating. So on that note, on the culture note, because I like kind of where your head's at on that, and I want to keep the same theme, you shared with me a tweet from Kai Crypto that I want to talk about because I think it's certainly interesting. The tweet was, I think the price action on some higher quality Blaster NFTs could get interesting once market participants get over the mental hurdle that they're supposed to trade near their refund price because of blur farming. I agree on this actually, but I'll throw it over to you actually and hear what you have to say on this tweet.
It's such an interesting point. And I feel like I'd had that idea somewhat, but hadn't fully put it together. And I think KY or Kai, he really laid it out nicely. Like let's take Sam Empty statistics. I think he actually dropped a very nice 200 photo NFT collection on Blaster, and I did mint it. I'm still holding one of these. I feel like using that as an example, people don't think that it necessarily has upside because they're paying it to the 0.5 ETH mint price, which is the refund. And it's like, okay, I can get my refund. I can get my money back at any given time. But there's no reason for it to be capped. Like the refund is just a mechanic. it's nice, but these are NFTs. Like, they're the same as all the other ones that we've ever traded across any chain. There's no reason for them to be capped. And perhaps it's because we haven't seen enough like truly good collections, from real artists and teams in the Blast ecosystem just yet. And like, I love OSF. I mean, his mints are very high supply, so I don't think we're going to see those really go parabolic, if I'm just being honest. Like their additions in large supplies. But like an artist like Boldianitis or someone who comes in with a quality collection, even if it's on Blaster, there's no reason why like these need to be limited. And hopefully people figure that out. So I think that will happen. It's likely the NFT collection that performs the best, that's not just being farmer manipulated, I think is going to be from a real artist or founder or team launching on Blaster. That's my prediction.
So you're saying they raise it, and you actually, it's very interesting, the mint mechanics that you can set up for this, because you can set up like a 0.25 mint price, and because it's refundable, and like you then get the gold distribution, and then you can use the jack. Like, it's actually very enticing for founders, for teams to do this. Like, I even floated the idea within our own organization, is like, yo, what if we did something over there, and it's like a cool activation we could do for a month and make it refundable, and like it's very I'm surprised more founders haven't done that yet, in terms of like a cool community activation similar to what OSF did. The other thing I was looking at is like Blastopians. I'm just curious what you make of this entire Blast NFT ecosystem. Right now, it's just like a disaster, to be honest, because it's just like pump and dumps with farmers just playing hot potato with one another. Are you interested in any of these existing collections that maybe aren't refundable, like a Blastopians? Obviously, the founder was getting some FUD, but I'm curious what you make of the current kind of state of affairs on Blast NFTs in general, if there are any that interest you right now.
I'm not interested at all. Zero of these NFTs interest me. I think, shout out to you. I mean, you nailed the trade of buying these up before Blur went live with the incentives, and then before the jackpot. So that was an incredible trade. But then some of these NFTs started hitting the jackpots, and people realized that you don't really get that much. So that's a bad reason to buy these. And they all just feel like vaporware. And I'm overgeneralizing. Like, I know that there are some real teams who've done, mints, like the Blast Toads. I think I would not call that vaporware. Like they're doing something with that product. I'm not super tied into exactly what it is, but it's just not interesting to me. Like, you got the farmers throwing them back and forth at each other hundreds of times per day. I don't want to get into that mess. I'd rather just play tokens if I'm gonna look for new assets. And the reality is, like, I haven't really been buying a whole lot. Like, Pacmoon is my primary position. I log in, I play IKB, and I play Fantasy.top. And now, like, Fantasy.top is Fantasy.top is a real risk to the NFT ecosystem in the near term, because you can just trade those, right? And I think instead of playing that, folks like you, I believe, have been simply just trading the cards, and probably doing better than you would have been trying to trade any of the Blast NFTs, right? Like, on that page.
I made more money trading Fantasy.top than I literally have all year, if not like the last 12 months, maybe my entire career.
Let's go.
Most people put in, so it's just like, I wouldn't even bother looking at like a Blastopian. I was like 0.15. Okay, I can get like a Zeneca rare right now for that much if I put in a bid, and I can like actually do stuff with it. Let's talk Fantasy.top. You got into it, I would say, not late, but certainly not one of those very first users. And since then, right, you have been you've been playing with a pretty large portfolio. I would say you're deploying some ETH. I'm going to pull up I hope you don't mind, your portfolio. You've got some pretty good looking cards here, but I'm curious. Walk me through your strategy, your thought process. You're a trader. Obviously, you've been talking to Brett a little bit, hearing his strategy. What do you make of the entire ecosystem? And I'll talk to you a little bit later about your hero strategy and what it was like being a hero this week.
Sure. So I would describe myself as late early. I wasn't playing on testnet. I almost skipped the first main tournament, but then like I started out saying like, this is all stupid. Like, rooting for people to tweet is stupid. And then I didn't want to be that guy who was just yelling about it without ever trying the product. So I started trying it. I was like, hey, this is actually kind of fun. I put together a team 1 hour before the main tournament one started. I finished in like 7,000th place. But I got hooked and I started buying a bunch of cards. And then like I fielded some decent teams here for this last slate of tournaments. Finished like 136 in main tournament 2. Was hoping to be top 100. A little disappointed there. Farouk let me down incredibly. Farouk is a bad hero. So I'll just leave it at that. My thoughts on
legendary Farouk.
I got so lucky. Also, that's actually why I really rolled more ETH into this. Is I had a pretty basic deck. You know, I was accumulating cards perhaps to win the jackpot. I turned 5 commons into a legendary Farouk. I was like, well, okay, now I can actually make a decent team. So let's fire into this. And so I got an epic stats. I got an epic Zeneca and a few others. And then now I'm just addicted. And like, I want to win tournaments. So like I went out and bought a Big Dick Bull rare today ahead of the rare tournament. Yeah, I fired 1.69 at this guy. So he better perform. I've got a pretty nice looking rare team. It's not locked. Don't necessarily want to reveal it ahead of the live, but it's not that hard to figure out if you look at my profile page. But it's fun, man. I'm addicted. I think your comparison to FriendTech feels just so spot on. Like I feel like we're in the first arc right now. Some people are starting to get. I think folks who came in on the lower end, like on the minnow side, half an ETH, 1 ETH, they're kind of figuring out like they can't really compete, and I think they're just flooring and getting out. I guess my argument to them is like, why not play this common tournament? Like for a while, like the first place team in the common tournament this week was like a half ETH team. Like you could have built that team for half an ETH. So like, I mean, if you don't like the game, that's fine. But these common tournaments have totally changed everything. It's so much more even. And I mean, you can legitimately build a good team for 1 ETH. And there's so much game theory with the stars changing, with like the scoring algorithms changing. So everyone can play. I think at the highest level, we're in that first FriendTech arc. We could see like a little bit of a pullback. When the next wave of Blast Gold distributions get announced, it's going to be huge. Like Pac-Man knows this is his number one thing in Blast right now. He's going to keep people coming to it. And I think we're going to see that next wave. And what people forget about FriendTech is how long it lasted. Like the good FriendTech days lasted for like 2 months. It was not 2 weeks. Yeah. It was a significant period of time. I think this is going to run. We know it's going to run at least until June 26th. And I think the team will have incentives to keep this going probably for another month past then. I think it's hard to really project out what post like July, August really looks like right now. I think we have to learn more. We have to learn more about these fan points, the stars, like where the token potentially comes in. But I'm feeling good. And that's why I keep buying cards, because I know I can continue to play in these tournaments. So like I'm building a portfolio, planning to play for at least the next 6 weeks. And I'm playing more than trading. I think it might actually be a leak, because I think trading may be more profitable.
I've been just hyper obsessing with trading, like almost to a bad, trading too much, maybe. Like and I'm still learning a little bit, but like the Kaleo trade I made was freaking awesome. And I've been,
too soon.
The opportunity. Well, I still got some more. I sold, a few more. I sold a rare up there at 1 ETH, man. So, which was great.
Oh, nice. That's a
trade
sale.
I've made. But the number one thing, if you're trading, the biggest thing I noticed, undeniably, the number one thing you could be doing on Fantasy.top is bidding. Like, if you are disciplined about I literally have a list of 15 people that I bid every morning and then I bid every night, and I have prices that I buy them at. I may have bought too many of certain cards, but like this sneaky thing of like buying when the 15-star common tournament next week. That's very interesting, because you want to find players that are underperforming relative to their star rating, right? So you almost want to find people right now that have underperformed this week, which is very like an Easy, for example, I think could be an interesting one next week, or Nick, all that. So anyways, it's very interesting. But before we wrap, Tyler, what was it like being a hero this week? I'm curious how you played it from a creator perspective. I've been pretty outspoken that you didn't have enough cards out there. You only had 22 cards, which I thought was absolute bullshit. I was talking smack to Travis. He didn't like it. But anyways, take me through it. What was it like being a hero this week? You did pretty well. Right now you're ranked 57. Not bad.
Oh, 57. I'm not tweeting very much today. I came out of the gate firing hard, and I'd say similar tweeting style of what I've been doing, but just with an increased velocity, a little bit more reply guy. I had some like big, like, not news posts, but like more personal stuff or more like engagement farming stuff kind of teed up. And then I kind of just decided not to go that route. And part of it is just because I don't know if I was even playing anybody's team. Like, I only got 22 cards. I realized this in the main tournament. Like, why would you have even played my card in the main tournament at the common level?
Right.
So I didn't
compete. You can't compete. Like, if people are like, I love Tyler, but they can't even build an epic card of you, so you can't use it. Like, it's what Bread Guy was saying, where we need more epics, we need more rares. But the way this is set up, this is a disaster. But sorry, you're firing me up. I'll let you finish.
No, I mean, it's pretty much it. So like, I basically decided I don't want to like wreck my like reputation as like a news provider for the NFT space, but by just like doing a bunch of engagement farming bullshit. So like, I had some of that teed up, and then I kind of just put it on the back burner. I think the hero exhaustion thing is real, but like for me, I am kind of terminally online, probably to a fault. I'm on Twitter all day, so I like tweeting. I like engaging with folks, so I'm going to keep the velocity up. But it's going to be, the game gets very interesting when it normalizes. Like when like NFT Stats is going so hard, and he's dropping all these bangers. He's not going to do that for the next 6 weeks, and like Zeneca is going to pull back on his pace. Right. So I think that's when the game's going to get really interesting.
I'm buying people that I think are going to be here, like create content either way. Like, it's like so people like you, I'm like, okay, if there weren't like literally like 15 Tyler cards, I'd be all over this, but it makes no sense right now. But you bring up a great point, which is the majority of people right now, it's like a split wave of people that are like, have never really been focused on like optimizing for Twitter performance in their lives, that are now making up for it by just tweeting random bullshit and engagement farming and doing all that stuff. That's not going to be sustainable. How long it lasts for, I don't know. But anyways, Tyler, fantastic having you on the show. I would love to have you on next time. I appreciate you taking time out of your family's day with Saturday, all that stuff with weekends. I know they can be tough, so really appreciate you joining, man. Make sure to follow him at Tyler_did_it. I hope, are you still hosting the Lucky Lead-In?
2 shows a day. Yeah. So FOMO hour at 10 a.m. Eastern, and then Lucky Lead at 11.
Subscribe.
I talk a lot.
To the newsletter. Subscribe to the newsletter, right? This is newsletter.luckytrader.com. Fantastic. It's the morning minute, gives you everything you need to know about everything going on in crypto and NFTs in an editorial fashion. It's really, really well done. Highly recommend it. Thank you so much, Tyler. Really appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Talk soon.
Bye. All right. We are in the tail end of this thing. We're about to take us home. Before, a quick reminder for everyone listening, we're giving away 200 buckaroos of Pacmoon. All you have to do, if you're listening on Twitter, retweet and comment. If you're listening on YouTube, give us a comment. Let us know you're here. We're going to pick 2 winners at the end of the show, $100 each. Before I move on to our next and final guest, this is his name is Radon Kai, at Radon Kai on Instagram. On Twitter, make sure to give him a follow. He is more of an underrated follow on all things crypto than Brett, I would say, in comparison to the follows. I tell him all the time that I don't like sharing his Twitter because he gives some fire alpha that I just want all to myself. He's currently doing which we won't talk about too much, but he's doing 100x base meme coin challenge that he just kicked off. Which we won't be talking about too much, but certainly interesting to watch for. But he's the person that I know that's the most plugged in on all things Pac-Man, Blast, Blur. Him and I talked about Blur launching on Blast literally a month ago, and it played out just like that. He's been leading me. He's been helping me with a lot of these things. But anyways, Kai, great to have you on the show, man. How are you?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Let's kick things off with the Blast TGE getting pushed back, because I know you and I have been talking about theories and timelines and kind of how Pac-Man is pivoting. He's been sharing, revealing his cards a little bit more the last few weeks. Obviously, we saw Blur launching on Blast. We're seeing this Blast jackpot, 2 things that we've kind of been speculating on for the last couple of weeks. Now we had the Blast TGE pushed back by a month, which means that Blur Season 3 also gets pushed back by a month. What do you make of what's going on Blast right now? Kind of how are you thinking about what Pacman is doing right now?
Yeah, you know, this kind of bias. I'm hoping that I think the jackpots were an indication into kind of an evolving perspective that he might have. Uh, Up to that point on the jackpots, this was just a farming layer. It's just farmers bridging their ETH and USDB over. And he realized that that's all that was going on. There wasn't any trading happening. Nobody was buying anything. So he drums up this jackpot thing. And I think that's insightful into where his head's at. I think what he realized, he's basically got a choice to make. He can be a farming ecosystem, and farming ecosystems, those don't come to mind right away. Those are ZK Sync, Starknet, Scroll. Does anybody talk about those?
Right.
And I think he's in danger of that if he creates Blur farming season number 6 and Blast farming season number 2, which is these unending emissions. So I think I think he made a little bit of a mistake when he first launched Blast. He kind of indicated to those projects that were launching, he's like, hey, I don't want any tokens. And I think he was worried about those tokens. Like if Thruster launched a token, it would compete with a potential Blast token. And so what he ended up with was all these projects and almost no tokens in the ecosystem, and nothing was pumping. So all people were doing was just bridging over and farming, but there was no actual real activity. And I think jackpots actually created that stimulus that he needed, where people started to pile into Pacmoon, they started to pile into some NFTs and other tokens. But I'm kind of excited for TGE. There's two things that I'm looking at really closely at TGE. One, what allocation does he release? We've seen significant blowback against Eigenlayer and Renzo. Even Starknet did their TGE after a lot of farming. All three of those projects gave way too much to the team and investors and not enough to the community. There's huge backlash. So I worry that if he only gives 12% of the supply to the community, he could be in for some backlash. I mean, people are already worn down by all the unending farming.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at that. How much does he airdrop? And then number two, just as important, is what does the next season look like? Because if there's more farming going on afterwards, I think people are going to get worn down. And I just don't see a lot of new tokens coming over to Blast and pumping with so many farmers. And I think that's why we don't see Blast NFTs pump at all, because 90% of the volume in the bids and asks are farmers. Who would want to go in there and buy an NFT on the hope that it's going to 5x or 10x when they know they're just being farmed? So he's got two really important decisions to make. One, how much do I give to the community, and how do I give that to them? He's actually very generous. Sorry, I'm talking a really long time. But he actually gave a significant portion of the original allocation of Blur to the community. He allocated 50% of Blur to the community. The problem was he's going to release it over 4 years. That's like 12 seasons of Blur farming rewards that are just going to be constantly emitted. I think he needs to rethink that a lot. And hopefully that's what he's doing with these jackpots. And maybe the delay in release is, look at Jupiter. Jupiter's performed pretty well after their airdrop. It fell for about 3 weeks, but what they did was they said, we're doing this $1 billion airdrop. It was like 900 million. And they were all over Discord. I was in that Discord saying, no more emissions for a year. We're going to do one more airdrop next January, but there's no more emissions, no more supply. And I think if Pacman wants to see real activity and real traders come over like they did to Solana, he's got to reassure everybody that there's not going to be this farming supply that's constantly dumped throughout the year. So those are the two things I'm watching. How much does he give the community, and how much farming is there after the TGE?
Wouldn't there need to be a large amount of farming to keep people engaged? Like, wouldn't you need to have another Blast Gold season. Like, it's hard for me to imagine a world where there's not another season of Blast Gold, right? Or else you're going to see like Fantasy.top absolutely dump afterwards. You're kind of leaving everyone out to dry. And then you also then don't have the incentives of people staying on other than projects like Thruster or YOLO Games, etc., launching their own tokens, which is another kind of layer to it.
That's a great question, Clemente. I think that's the leap of faith you got to make. I mean, it's not like Solana meme coin season. They had a lot of farming going on. You had the Jito airdrop and the Jupiter airdrop. But when meme coin season was happening, it was just meme coins popping off. Nobody's excited about going and clicking a bunch of buttons. Just talk to Pio and Nick.
Yeah.
I mean, what gets people excited is a token 5xing, 10xing, the tokens that did a 100x if you got early enough. If he doesn't do that, he's never going to see real users come over, and he risks making himself another Starknet or ZK Sync, in my opinion. One big famous project from 2021 was Big Data Protocol, huge yield farming for data, and that chart is ugly. And that's what Blast and Blur could be, is just down only forever. And I think that's why nobody wants to go trade those tokens anymore, and that's why we have that backlash against VC tokens. So I'm hoping this delay is just him rethinking the tokenomics a little bit. I get excited when I think about Friendtech. Paradigm backed both Friendtech and Blur and Blast. Hopefully that they've been talking to Pacman about the same thing of like, hey, there's this new meta. VC tokens are hated. Fair launch tokens are not. If they could convince Racer to do a 100% community fair launch, why not do a fair launch with Blast? And I talk about that in one of the recent videos I posted. If people are estimating that Blast might be valued at $5 billion to $12 billion, if he has the courage, if he's got the balls to do a 100% community airdrop, and it's valued above $6.9 billion, that'll be the largest airdrop in crypto history. Uniswap was the largest airdrop at like 6.9 billion. If he does a 100%, now it's kind of a waste from his perspective. If you do a 100% community fair launch and it launches at 4 billion, you're like fifth. It's like big deal. You could make an argument that $4 billion in wealth to all your Blast users is a huge haul. Get some tokens out there, and those tokens are going to pump. I think that's exactly what happened with the Jito and Jupiter airdrop. You had $1 billion in free capital. Now you had all this supply of everybody selling all that Jupiter and selling all that Jito. Took about 3 weeks to spread out. But once all the sellers were out of tokens, everybody had that new wealth from that free money, and they just poured it into Solana meme coins. So, even if he only does a $4 billion airdrop, I think tokens pump as long as the tokens are there. Sorry, I'll let you cut in quickly, but there's an interesting distinction between Solana meme coin season, the Jupiter airdrop, and this Blast airdrop and Blast, is that not only could he have meme coins, he's got Blur and NFTs. So if not only meme coins are pumping, but also we get an NFT season and NFTs start pumping, he could have a whole new level of excitement that wasn't even existent on Solana. But my thesis on ETH, or specifically ETH NFTs, is they're not going to pump until farming is over. Until you stop incentivizing bids and asks, nobody's going to buy any NFTs. It's even happening with the new NFTs on Blast right now. No real user is buying them. So that's why it's such an important factor. TGE is, does he end that farming season? Like I said, you could use that Blur for something else. You could, if he's engineering a bridge to bridge ETH NFTs to Blast right now with this extra month he's got, he could just say, hey, no more bidding and listing incentives for NFTs. I'm going to incentivize you to bridge your ETH NFTs over and start trading them there. That removes the overhang of the Blur incentives for trading and allows ETH NFTs to possibly pump on Blast. That could be very big. Get more tokens released. Those could pump. You add in dream scenario, it's valued at like $9 billion and he does 100% community fair launch. That's 9 times as big as the Jupiter airdrop was on Solana, how much would tokens pump in that scenario? I think they could pump a lot. So it's going to be an interesting decision ahead for him.
And I would love for that to happen. It's hard for me to imagine a world where Pacman, knowing the incentives, how he typically rolls with incentives, that there won't be a season 2 of Blast Gold, and then there's they do loyalty scores and all that stuff within L2s.
Two points on that. One, he's been trashed for years over this. You could see him getting like a little emotional in tweets in July of last year, trying to respond about the unending farming and ETH NFT prices just falling and falling. I don't think any human, no matter how strong you are, can listen to that since last July and not second guess yourself on that. So, and then second of all, I don't know. I just hope that he realizes that there's so many examples. I mean, look at DeFi. DeFi has been in a bear market since 2021, and all of DeFi was just yield farming. It was just farming incentives. And we've seen a lot of bad examples with ZK Sync and Starknet, which I talked about earlier, is if you just have unending emissions for farmers, there's not a lot of real activity that's going to go to your ecosystem. I know he's really good at like incentivizing people to do what he needs to do for his project. But I think all he really needs to do now is just to have tokens and NFTs pump on his blockchain. Another thing that I've talked about, he mentioned this interesting point on that Remint Reality podcast at NFT NYC, where he said the reason why those incentives and bidding and listing exist is because he needs to put $1 on the ground to get somebody to buy an NFT and then list it for sale later. And I think that $1 on the ground for farmers like CBB helps reimburse CBB for the ETH mainnet gas costs. And then it also helps him because you can't truly market make NFTs unless you have a perpetual product to short at the same time as you buy. So CBB, when he's putting all these bids, he's taking directional risk. If he buys 30 pudgy penguins, he's got to take downward price risk because he can't short the perp on pudgy penguins. So if he buys pudgy penguins at 12 and then he's got to sell them at 11.8, he's taking a loss. That $1 on the ground reimburses CBB for that loss because he's taking directional risk, and it reimburses him for the ETH mainnet gas costs. If he's able to bridge ETH NFTs to Blast, you no longer have the issue of mainnet gas costs. And he said he wants to build perps. So if perps exist, a market maker like CBB could remain delta neutral. He's basically market making for free. And now he can actually make a profit between that bid-ask spread on market making, and he doesn't need the blur incentives anymore. So hopefully that's what Pacman's thinking is, I needed these incentives to bring market makers to my platform on mainnet. I no longer need to incentivize them on Blast. Therefore, I'm going to provide different incentives, which I hope is either just bridging ETH mainnet NFTs to Blast, which you and I have been predicting for a long time and hoping for, or maybe just dump the rest of them in one big airdrop, because that's the new meta. It's all over the place. The new meta is just get all your supply out. If there's overhanging supply, nobody wants to trade it anymore. So pretty interesting.
And then, so what you're saying is basically at a high level, right? There's a couple of things. The first is, and you've talked about this before, the ETH NFTs basically are not going to move. We're not going to see any positive price action really at a large level until we get fixed incentives, right? And the incentives right now are you lose money, but that loss is made up for with your blur rewards, right?
Yeah.
Like with the blur airdrop that you get. What you're saying is we see if we get to an environment where the incentives aren't basically offsetting the losses that people are taking in gas, in whatever that 0.5% royalty fee, etc. If we can create an environment on Blast, maybe even using the 5% native yield or whatever, or this gasless kind of environment that we're creating, you're saying that we could possibly Pacman could possibly restructure this incentive so farmers aren't losing money basically on purpose and then getting compensated for it on using the Blast or Blur token, and then could create a more interesting environment for ETH NFTs in general.
100%. You nailed it. The hope is just that he realizes that. Hopefully, I think he does. Because those were the purposes for launching Blast. One, to reduce mainnet gas costs. Number two, to do perps. And number three, to provide a native yield. All those are about making market making in NFTs cost you zero and earn you a native yield. So it should be a net positive, actually, to earn or to market make NFTs on Blast. Now the question is, who's going to market make those? The biggest problem with providing liquidity in DeFi is you're able to earn 5, 6, maybe 12% yield, but who wants to do that when tokens are pumping 500%? So that'll be the big question, is like, does he still need to put $1 on the ground if he wants people to market make NFTs? Because people would rather just try to get the 100x rather than you might earn 4% on your ETH and then another 5% from the bid-ask spread on market making. That's got to be appealing for a lot of bigger funds, though, and trading firms.
Yeah, the people that aren't like degens wanting to make like a firm, or what an institution's not going to want to, is less interested in these 500% gains or whatever shit coins, because it's a different type of ball game that they're playing within. When you look at Blast in general, Kai, you and I have talked about knowing when to sell, knowing what the top signal is, and starting to identify those factors. We're getting, obviously, we saw we have another 6 weeks of all of this, but I've been starting to think about what my plan is going to be going into the TGE in terms of the assets that I'm holding, in terms of gold, in terms of all that stuff. Have you given this thought in terms of what price action might be like afterwards, knowing Pacman and how he's been able to post airdrop actually create tokenomics that make price action bullish actually over time, so the people that sell in the beginning get punished a little bit? But I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that in particular for the TGE, knowing when to sell, etc.
Oh yeah, for sure. I both you and I felt the pain from the Jupiter airdrop. I think you and I and we waited all of January. We were the guys like, when token. This is the #1 trading platform on Solana. We've been using it. We're going to get an airdrop. And what I realized during that period was, it's such an emotional time, and it's going to be an emotional time for people that have been farming Blast. Look at Jen. That girl's life has been changed. Like, literally, the girl's probably going to be able to retire depending on how big this airdrop is.
Yeah.
And she's been going through this for like 3 or 4 weeks. And you too, Clemente, you've been on this meteoric rise, and you've been making money on Fantasy.top, turn around your losses. What's going to happen when we get to January 26th or whatever it is? June 26th, you're going to experience this crescendo of excitement. It's just going to get higher and higher 2 and 3 weeks in. It's probably going to start building with like a big jackpot, like a big 1 million gold jackpot's going to hit like later this week or this weekend or something. And people are going to get really excited. Then people are going to pour in, and Pacmoon's going to do like a 2 or 3x. And people are probably going to get really excited for 2 or 3 weeks. And there's going to be a lot of volatility. Like, people are going to buy tokens, get the jackpot, and it's going to dump 50%. What's going to happen is you're going to be so emotionally exhausted from all that excitement over 3 months that eventually people are just going to start peeling off. And they're going to, 1 week before the TGE, they're going to be like, oh, there's only 1 jackpot left, or there's possibly no jackpots left. I'm going to sell my Pacmoon, or I'm going to sell my District 1 token. So I was already risking off about 2 weeks ahead of the original TGE. Sold all my Pacmoon actually, and then he delayed it by a month, and now I'm like, but I would play it extraordinarily cautiously. Think about it emotionally. The more excited you are, people are going to get excited. And there's no more like your expectations are already so high, the price couldn't possibly go any higher just because of how high emotionally everybody had come. Everybody who's been playing on Blast had come. So I would be approaching that like week or two before TGE and the time afterwards very cautiously. What we saw with that Jupiter airdrop was the 3 weeks after, you and I were crying all over the timeline as it got released at like 70 cents. We didn't sell, and it just meandered down to 45 cents over 3 weeks. I remember in the middle of that third week thinking, oh my gosh, like this is like, it's been 2 months of down only on Jupiter. And then I looked at the dates and I'm like, it's only been 3 weeks. And then, of course, what happened after that, Solana meme coin season hit. I had sold the bottom, and I spent the next 2 weeks sidelined. So I'm trying to recognize those emotions, like a lot of traders do that I follow here since last cycle. Is that when you're feeling super euphoric, the cognizant traders are getting exhausted and they're taking profits, and then let another quick thing on the airdrops is an airdrop is so much supply that there's more for sale than buyers. So I don't think token prices have anywhere to go but down. And we talked about this with the Jupiter airdrop was if you're in the US and a lot of tax jurisdictions, you have to sell like 30-40% just to cover your taxes. If you don't, you're at a risk of saying you claimed it at $1. Now you owe 30 cents in taxes, but then it falls to 50 cents and then you sell, then you still owe the 30 cents. So not tax advice, not financial advice. I'm not a tax attorney or anything, but I think it's prudent to sell right away. There's definitely more sellers than buyers. Let all the sellers run out of tokens, and now everybody's wealthier. And that's why I'm like, Pac-Man, are you going to be a farming ecosystem? Or are you going to be an ecosystem where people come to trade NFTs and tokens and they pump like crazy? So he should, I think, be very generous with an airdrop. Release 50% of the community and say, oh, the next season is a year long. You're not going to get your airdrop for a year from now for what I need you to do for the next year. People don't have to worry about supply. And then after that 3 or 4 weeks of selling only, everybody who got euphoric's been like, oh, it's been months and Thruster is not going up and Blast is not going up. This was a total failure. What, so lame. It didn't hit my expectations. That's when you want to pile in and say, hey, I sold my airdrop. I got my taxes covered. Everybody thinks this is dead, but I remember the excitement I experienced in May. I'm piling back into Pacmoon. I'm piling into any other token that's been released. And I think you'll see that wealth effect really pump the prices. And that's what Pac-Man will need if he wants a successful ecosystem, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so on this note, you're unlocking certain things that I've been thinking about. The first thing is there any chance you think actually instead of the airdrop and the airdrop happens, there's a certain distribution, but what if he, instead of doing this direct to user airdrop or direct to user incentives for season 2 or whatever, he just distributes it to teams? And he just says, hey, I'm going to unlock whatever 15, 20% of this token supply is going to be vested over time via airdrops to the actual dApps, right? So dApps, just like gold, can choose how they want to distribute this to their users. It can be they keep a certain percentage of it, basically just like a Blast gold. Do you feel like that would still create this farming ecosystem, or is it a happy medium between direct to user versus
unless there's a clear assurance that those rewards aren't going to be spread out over time, there will always be that supply overhang, even if you give it to the projects. So I think if you look very clearly, the winners and the losers in tokens are the tokens that get all the supply that's going to be out there for the next bit out there right away. Or it's the tokens that have been in circulation for a long time and they've only got like 3 or 6% of emissions going on every year. That'd be like a Solana or something. But if every trader is really, really good now, they're very observant. They're going to know that if he's given away gold and Blast to all the projects and those projects are going to distribute them over the next 6 to 9 months, I wouldn't be buying into those projects, and I don't think anybody else would either.
And you make people are obsessed with the jackpot. It's funny. The jackpot stuff is very interesting.
Yeah.
Before we close, you've been more plugged into base recently, which I found a little bit surprising. I've been because I'm probably biased because I'm just like obsessed with all things Blast, and I've just been like hyper focused on this. Why are you more interested, or are you more interested in base than Blast right now? And do you have a timeline where maybe that might change? I know I saw a few tweets from you on that, but I'm curious why you think all things base right now.
Yeah, it's just this liquidity theory I have around airdrops. So that Jupiter airdrop was so influential in my thinking right now of seeing $900 million airdrop to the community, and then 3 or 4 weeks later, Solana meme coin season starts. And we just saw the Friendtech airdrop happen. That was less. It was like 250 million to all base users. But I'm really looking, and that's why I set up that public test wallet of just testing this theory of, okay, you get 3 weeks of supply of friend in the market. It'll be down only. And then 3 or 4 weeks after that airdrop, you might see ecosystem tokens start to pump. So people who got that Friendtech airdrop, they go buy Toshi, the top dog coin meme on base. And I'm just testing that theory. I think the same thing happened with the Uniswap airdrop. I think that happened in like October, November of 2021, right around the time that DeFi summer was deflating. Everything went down 80%. Similar thing happened with this Friendtech airdrop. Was meme coin season is deflating. A lot of tokens are already down 80%. They airdrop Friendtech, and now tokens are down 80%. People have the airdrop money that they sold. Now they pour it into base meme coins. The second reason why I'm excited about it is I remember Coinbase marketing on-chain summer very heavily last summer. And that was when Toshi first got attention of like, this is the dog coin of base chain. And I think it got a pump towards the end of last summer. It was right on the heels of like Pepe and on-chain summer. I think Toshi got a nice little pump. So I think $200 million in airdrop rewards from the Friendtech airdrop combined with Coinbase's marketing of another on-chain summer, we could see some pumps. I don't know. Signs are pretty good. If you look at what tokens got good, strong buy volume in the last few days, Pepe, Harry Potter, Obama, Sonic Inu, and Mogcoin, those are all ETH NFTs. As a biased homer who's got like 6 ETH on base, I'm hoping like, oh, if Pepe and dollar sign Bitcoin pump, ETH gas prices go high, Coinbase's marketing on-chain summer, people go to base just like they did Blast or Solana and say, oh, I'm going to buy the dog coin or the cat coin there. So that's what I've tried to do is say, hey, let's try to get a 10x 3 to 4 weeks after that Friendtech airdrop, about 200 million. Maybe that's not enough, but I mean, AVAX did a $200 million incentive program and all their tokens pumped last cycle as well. And then what I would like to do is wait 3 or 4 weeks after the Blast airdrop into mid-July, and then take those gains that I got on base from the Friendtech airdrop and roll them into Blast tokens and get my 10x on Pacmoon and other things like that. So that's what I'm trying out. It's just a liquidity theory. People gain a wealth effect from their airdrop after the sellers overwhelm the buyers. No more sellers left. They poured into those ecosystem tokens. Where would I be wrong on that? Maybe all that Friendtech airdrop goes within those Friendtech chat rooms and those memes within the Friend ecosystem. Maybe people take those and they put them in traditional ETH like DeFi 2.0 tokens, so they don't have to flow back into memes. But I do think, similar to how DeFi season kept coming back throughout the 2021 cycle, I think meme coin season is going to keep coming back. After we
and Coinbase is the interesting side of it is Coinbase has this marketing arm, and I saw Rick Starr say it could be a very interesting seamless integration for normies. Like let's be honest, we're not going to have, at least for now, we're not going to be having normies buying like Pacmoon, right? Like as much as I like the token, it's a different type of play versus these other ones are interesting, especially with Coinbase attached to it. And I saw Jesse Pollock tweeting about like incentives that they're rolling out in grants. And I think they gave a
Oh, that's
grant to,
good. I haven't seen that.
World PvP. Have you checked that out? Are you interested in that?
I've been seeing Easy tweeting about it. I don't know much about it, but I did see somebody like 2 or 3 months ago during meme coin season talk about basically nation meme coins, and I think that sounds super interesting. So that's on base.
It's on base. People have been telling me
Nice.
to get over there. It's certainly interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is more Blast, but I think eventually we're going to be talking about base stuff on this show.
Yeah. I mean, not to alienate everybody out of Blast. Tyler makes a great point about new money coming in. It is an opportunity for new money, and everybody's going off of NFT stats' estimation that they're going to release 12 to 13% of the supply, same as they did Blur. That happened over a year ago. Don't be afraid of overestimating what this Blast airdrop could be worth. I mean, Friendtech did 100%. Do I think Pac-Man's going to do 100%? No. But could he do 50% of like a $9 billion protocol, $4.5 billion airdrop? I would love for him to swing for the fences, and maybe Paradigm and him can be sure that he launches at like an $8 billion or $10 billion valuation, drop 100% of it, and he gets to say that he did a $10 billion airdrop to the Blast community. Jen's the richest girl that we know at that point. Clemente is swimming in money, and what are we going to do? Then tokens are going to pump. But touching back on base, I think you make a great point. Is right now it's just crypto native money circulating around in a circle, and it's just about when do more people flood into a smaller ecosystem like Blast. Hopefully Coinbase or something is that silver bullet that gets real people who weren't playing in crypto these last 12 months in there. It happened with SafeMoon on Binance chain last cycle. I think it was around April of 2021. Trust Wallet started marketing, hey, buy SafeMoon here.
Yeah.
This token's going to the moon. Maybe that token is on base with the Coinbase wallet, but we need something to bring in fresh money. Maybe GME will get everybody's attention, and they'll say, oh, GME went off and then crypto went off. I'm going to go start playing crypto again. And maybe Coinbase is ready for that. They've got some good ads during the NBA playoffs.
They've been crushing
some
it.
really good ads.
I immediately know it's the style of the way they're doing it. I immediately know it's a Coinbase ad. I don't even need to see any of like the standard crypto or let's rechange the system or whatever it is. They're crushing it. Kai, thank you so much for joining, man. On taking your time out of your Saturday. Make sure couldn't say this more, but Kai is the #1 person to follow under 1,000 followers. Literally just fire. He's doing video content. I've been seeing that video content. Kai, let's go.
It's rough. Still learning.
It's the same stuff. Like I've been experimenting with a bunch of stuff, but highly recommend following him. He's dropping some fire, contrarian takes that you like. Actually finding valuable stuff on Twitter is very difficult sometimes. So make sure to follow him at Radon Kai on Twitter. Kai, thank you so much for joining, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Clemente. Appreciate you doing this. Doing great.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's our show. I'm going to pick 2 quick winners for the Pacmoon airdrop. The very first one I'm going to pick is I'm going to pick Rocco for the YouTube winner. Rocco, if you're listening, DM me. If not, I will pick someone else. But thank you all for listening. The other person I picked for the giveaway will be Strudel Janu. Strudel Janu, I'll DM me on Twitter. $100. Thank you all so much for listening, guys. Really appreciate it. Hope you all have a fantastic Saturday. We'll be back